The first thing I felt was pain, sharp, hot, and everywhere at once. My ribs screamed. My head throbbed like a drumbeat from hell. And my left arm. I couldn't move it. Couldn't even tell if it was still there. Then came the beeping. Steady. Insistent. A heart monitor. Hospital. Okay. I was alive. I blinked against the fluorescent glare, my vision swimming into focus. White ceiling. 4-pole. The sterile, antiseptic smell of trauma and survival. And then, Lila. She was curled in the vinyl chair beside my bed, knees drawn to her chest, eyes red-rimmed and swollen. Her dark hair was tangled, her hoodie stained with something I didn't want to identify. But she was here. She was whole. Relief washed over me so hard it made me dizzy. Lila, my voice cracked like dry wood. She startled, then scrambled to her feet. Mom! You're awake. She grabbed my good hand, her fingers ice cold. They said you might not wake up for hours. Or worse. I tried to smile, but my face felt stiff, bruised. You're okay? She nodded fast, too fast. Yeah. Just a few scrapes. You took the worst of it. I remembered flashes, the screech of tires, the sickening crunch of metal, the world flipping sideways. Glass exploding like stars. Then nothing. I squeezed her hand. Thank God. She leaned and then, close enough that I could smell the faint trace of vanilla perfume beneath the hospital stink. Her breath was warm against my ear. Don't tell them it was my fault. The word slithered into my skull like a spider. Cold. Wrong. I pulled back, searching her face. Her eyes darted away instantly, but not before I saw it, the panic, the guilt, the raw terror coiled beneath her skin. What are you talking about? I whispered. She shook her head, lips pressed tight. Just, please. Say you swerved. Say a deer ran out or something. Anything. Just don't say it was me. My stomach dropped. Because now I remembered. Not the crash itself, but what came right before it. We'd been arguing. Again. You're grounded until you're 30, I'd snapped, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Rain lashed the windshield. Portland in November, gray, wet, endless. I didn't do anything wrong. Lila shot back from the passenger seat, arms crossed, voice sharp with that teenage venom I'd come to dread. You don't get to control who I talk to. I get to control whether you come home at 3 a.m. smelling like smoke and cheap cologne. I'd retorted. Who is he, Lila? Who's this guy you're sneaking around with? She'd rolled her eyes, turned to stare out the window. You wouldn't understand. Try me. Silence. Then, quieter, he's older. 19. His name's Eli. My blood went cold. 19? You're 16. He's not like that, she'd insisted, defensive. He's sweet. He listens to me. He's using you, I'd said flatly. And if I find out he's given you anything, alcohol, pills, anything, I swear to God. That's when she'd turned on me, eyes blazing. You're just jealous. Dad's been gone 3 years, and you've turned into this ghost. You work, you sleep, you ignore me. Maybe I need someone who actually sees me. The words hit like a slap. Because they were true. Partially. Since Daniel died, sudden cardiac arrest, no warning, Gone before the ambulance even arrived, I'd buried myself in double shifts, in charts and vitals and other people's emergencies. Anything to avoid the silence of our empty house. Anything to outrun the grief that still woke me gasping at 3 a.m. I'd looked at her then, really looked. My daughter, once all dimples and bedtime stories, now a stranger with smudged eyeliner and secrets. "I see you, Lila," I'd said, voice breaking. "Every damn day." She'd opened her mouth to reply when headlights blinded me. Not deer. Not rain. A truck, veering into our lane. I jerked the wheel. Too hard. Too fast. The car fishtailed. Tires lost the road. We spun. And then, impact. Now, in the hospital bed, I stared at her. At the girl who just asked me to lie about the worst night of our lives. "Lila," I said slowly, "what really happened?" Her lower lip trembled. I grabbed the wheel. My breath caught. "I was mad," she whispered, tears spilling over. "You said he was using me, and I wanted you to stop. So I grabbed it. Just for a second. But you swerved, and then..." She broke off, sobbing into her hands. Oh God. It wasn't a deer. It wasn't black ice. It was her. My 16-year-old daughter had yanked the steering wheel during a fight and sent us careening into a guardrail. And now she was asking me to cover it up. I closed my eyes. The pain in my body was nothing compared to the ache in my chest. Because I knew what this meant. If the police found out she'd interfered with the driver, if they determined she caused the crash, she could be charged. Reckless endangerment. Maybe more. And with my injuries, broken ribs, possible concussion, that arm that still wouldn't move, this wasn't just a fender bender. This was serious. But she was my child. My only child. Daniel's legacy. The one piece of him I had left. The nurse chose that moment to walk in, cheerful, efficient, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Chen, you're awake. How are we feeling?" Lila wiped her face instantly, pasting on a wobbly smile. "She just woke up. She's groggy." The nurse nodded, checking my vitals. "You gave us a scare. Single vehicle collision, high-speed impact. Lucky you weren't ejected." I swallowed. What did my daughter tell you?" "That you swerved to avoid something in the road," the nurse said lightly. "Deer, maybe? Happens all the time out near Highway 26 this time of year." Lila wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at her, really looked. Saw the fear, the shame, the desperate plea in her silence. And in that moment, I made my choice. "Yeah," I said, my voice rough but steady. "A deer. Came out of nowhere." The nurse jotted it down. Poor thing probably didn't see it coming either. When she left, Lila exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. She squeezed my hand again, her eyes wet with gratitude, and something else. Something darker. Relief, yes. But also expectation. As if she already knew I'd keep lying. And maybe I would. Because what kind of mother sends her daughter to juvie over a mistake? Over a moment of teenage rage and stupidity? But as I lay there, listening to the hum of machines and the distant wail of an ambulance, another thought slithered in, cold and unwelcome. What if it wasn't just a mistake? What if this Eli, this 19-year-old who made her come home smelling like secrets, had something to do with it? Lila had been different lately. Jumpy. Distracted. Skipping school. deleting texts the second I walked into the room. And now this. I turned my head slightly, watching her. She was scrolling through her phone, thumb flying over the screen, expression unreadable. "Who were you texting?" I asked softly. She froze. "No one. Lila. It's just a friend," she mumbled. "Don't make a thing out of it." But I already was. Because in my 12 years as an ICU nurse, I'd learned one brutal truth: accidents are rarely just accidents. And lies, especially the ones wrapped in love, always leave scars. I closed my eyes again, not from pain this time, but from the weight of what I'd just done. I'd lied to protect her. But as the morphine dripped into my veins and the room blurred at the edges, I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't saved her tonight. I'd just buried us both deeper. The lie settled into my bones like a splinter I couldn't pull out. "Dear," I told the officer the next morning, voice steady despite the throbbing in my skull. "Came out of nowhere on Highway 26. I swerved, lost control." He nodded, scribbling in his notepad. "Happens more than you'd think this time of year. No suspicion. No follow-up. Just a tired cop wrapping up a routine report." I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt like I'd just signed a contract with the devil. Back in my hospital room, Lila hovered near the window, phone pressed to her ear, whispering in that hushed, urgent tone she'd started using weeks ago. The one that vanished the second I walked into the room. "You okay?" I asked. She jumped, shoving the phone into her hoodie pocket. "Yeah. Just talking to Maya." Maya hadn't returned my calls. I knew because I'd tried reaching her the night before, desperate for someone who might tell me the truth about what was really going on with my daughter. Lila came to the bedside, forcing a smile. "They're discharging you tomorrow. You'll be okay, right?" "I'll be fine," I said, watching her. Her eyes flicked to the door, then the floor, then anywhere but mine. She kept tugging at the sleeve of her sweatshirt, pulling it down over her wrist like she was cold, even though the room was warm. That's when I saw it. A faint purple smudge just above her elbow. Not a scrape. Not a mosquito bite. A bruise. Oval-shaped. The kind left by fingers. My stomach twisted. "Lila," I said softly, "what happened to your arm?" She yanked the sleeve down harder. "Nothing. I bumped it." "Bumped it how?" "I don't know, Mom." "Getting out of the car, maybe." "Stop interrogating me." "I'm not interrogating you. I'm worried." "Well, don't be." Her voice cracked. "You've got enough to worry about without making up stories about me." "I'm not making anything up," I said, keeping my tone calm. "I just want to know if someone's hurting you." Her laugh was sharp, brittle. "Oh, here we go. Always assuming the worst. Always looking for monsters." "I'm looking for the truth." "Well, maybe the truth is I'm fine. Maybe the truth is you should just drop it." She turned away, arms crossed, shoulders tense. And in that moment, I saw it, not just defensiveness, but fear. Deep, coiled fear. That night, after she finally fell asleep on the pull-out chair, exhausted from 2 days of adrenaline and guilt, I waited until her breathing evened out. Then I reached for her phone. It was tucked under her pillow, screen dark. I held my breath as I swiped it open. No passcode. She must have disabled it after the crash, maybe in the chaos. I scrolled through her recent texts. Most were with Eli. Dozens of messages a day. Some sweet. Some vague. Some, chilling. You sure she won't say anything? She's my mom. She'll protect me. Good. Because if she talks, it's over for both of you. My hands shook. I scrolled further back. Found a thread from 3 nights before the crash. She's asking too many questions again. Then shut her up. Tell her I'm just a friend. She doesn't believe me. Make her believe you. Or I'll make her believe me. And then, the night of the accident. It's done. She thinks it was a deer. Perfect. Keep her quiet. If she changes her story, I'll make sure everyone knows what really happened that night. I froze. That night. Not the crash. That night. What night? I dug deeper, heart hammering. Found a hidden folder in her photos, password protected, but she'd saved the hint in her notes, Dad's birthday. I typed it in. The folder opened. Dozens of screenshots. Texts from Eli. Voice memos. One labeled proof. I tapped it. Eli's voice, calm, almost bored. You tell anyone what I did, and I'll show your mom the video. You really think she'll still love you after she sees you begging for it? I gagged. Turned the volume down, tears blurring my vision. This wasn't teenage rebellion. This was control. Manipulation. Abuse. And I'd been too tired, too grief-struck, too buried in double shifts to see it. The next morning, I walked out of the hospital with a sling on my left arm, 3 cracked ribs, and a prescription for painkillers I knew I wouldn't take. I needed to stay sharp. Lila drove us home in my car, silent the whole way. Every time I glanced at her, she was checking her rearview mirror like she expected someone to be following us. At home, I tried to act normal. Made tea. Asked about school. She gave one-word answers, eyes glued to her phone. Later that day, my colleague Dr. Patel called. Mara, she said, voice tight, I heard about the accident. Are you okay? I'm healing, I said. A pause. Look. I don't know how to say this gently, but people are talking. About what? About you texting while driving. Someone from the ER said the police found your phone cracked near the passenger seat, screen still lit. That's not, I cut myself off. Of course they'd assume it was me. Who else would they suspect? Mara, you know how this place is. One rumor, and your name's mud. Especially after the Johnson case last year. I remembered. Nurse Johnson had been suspended for 3 months over an unfounded allegation of medication diversion. The whispers never stopped, even after she was cleared. I didn't text while driving, I said firmly. I swerved to avoid a deer. But even as I said it, the lie tasted like ash. Dr. Patel sighed. I believe you. But you might want to get ahead of this. HR's already asking questions. I hung up, numb. 15 years. 15 years of showing up early, staying late, holding dying patients' hands when their families couldn't bear to watch. And in 2 days, it could all vanish over a rumor. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table while Lila microwaved leftovers. I watched her, really watched. The way her shoulders hunched when her phone buzzed. The way she flinched at loud noises. The way she never laughed anymore. Lila, I said gently, who is Eli? She froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. What? Eli. Your boyfriend. Who is he? Her face shut down. Why do you care? Because I found the bruises. Because I heard the voice memo. Because I'm your mother, and I'm terrified for you. For a second, I thought she might break. Her eyes filled. Her lower lip trembled. Then she set the spoon down hard. You went through my phone? I had to. You had no right, she shouted, voice cracking. You think you're protecting me, but you're just suffocating me. Eli's the only one who actually listens. Lila, he's threatening you. He's not. You don't know him. I know what I heard. She stormed out, slamming her bedroom door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. I stood there, shaking, staring at the closed door. That's when it hit me. She wasn't defending him because she loved him. She was defending him because she was scared of what would happen if she didn't. And the worst part? I just made it worse. Because now, thanks to my lie at the hospital, Eli had leverage. If Lila ever tried to leave him, he could say, "Go ahead. Tell them the truth about the crash. See how fast your mom loses her license, her job, her freedom." I'd handed him the rope to strangle us both. I sank into a chair, head in my hands. Outside, rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder, drumming against the roof like a warning. Somewhere in this city, a 19-year-old boy was watching his phone, waiting for my daughter to obey. And I, Mara Chen, ICU nurse, single mother, woman who'd spent her life stitching strangers back together, had no idea how to save my own child without destroying everything we had left. The lie had festered. Now it was growing teeth. 3 days after discharge, I stood outside Ground and Company. A sleek, minimalist coffee shop in the Pearl District where Lila had mentioned Eli worked part-time. She didn't know I'd memorized the name weeks ago during one of her rare, unguarded texts. I'd worn my scrubs, not out of laziness, but strategy. Nurses in uniform are invisible. We're background noise, trusted, overlooked, harmless. I spotted him instantly. Eli Vance sat near the window, laptop open, fingers tapping with practiced ease. 19, maybe 20. Sharp jawline, tousled brown hair, wearing a fitted navy sweater that probably cost more than my weekly grocery bill. He laughed at something on his screen, light, effortless, and for a second, I almost believed Lila. Maybe he was just a sweet college kid who listened. Then he glanced up. His eyes locked onto mine through the glass. Not startled. Not confused. Calculating. I pushed the door open. The bell chimed. A few patrons glanced up, then returned to their lattes and laptops. Eli didn't move. Just watched me approach, a slow, knowing smile curling at the corner of his mouth. "Ms. Chen," he said before I could speak. "I was wondering when you'd show up." My pulse hammered, but I kept my voice steady. "You know who I am. I know you're Lila's mom. And I know you've been asking questions." He closed his laptop with deliberate calm. "Sit. You look like you could use a coffee." "I don't want coffee. I want to know what you did to my daughter." That smile didn't waver. He leaned back, arms crossed. "Lila's fine. A little dramatic, maybe, but fine. She's got a wild imagination, Ms. Chen. Always spinning stories to get attention. This isn't about attention. She's got bruises." His expression flickered, just for a millisecond, but I saw it. A tightening around his eyes. Cold. Reptilian. Teenagers fall. They bump into things. You of all people should know injuries aren't always what they seem. He tilted his head. Especially when someone's looking for a villain. "I'm not looking," I said quietly. I'm seeing. He sighed, as if bored by my persistence. Look. I care about Lila. A lot. But she's under a lot of pressure, school, her dad being gone, you working all the time. Sometimes she says things, exaggerates. That night in the car? She panicked. Grabbed the wheel. It was an accident. A stupid, tragic accident. He paused, then added softly, but accidents happen. Let's not make it worse. The way he said it, like a warning wrapped in concern, sent ice down my spine. Worse for who? I asked. He didn't answer. Just held my gaze, that polite mask slipping just enough to let me see the steel underneath. Go home, Ms. Chen. Take care of yourself. Let Lila heal. And stop digging. I left without another word. But I didn't go home. I walked 2 blocks to the public library, logged into a guest terminal, and typed Eli Vance Portland. Dozens of results popped up, mostly tied to his father, Richard Vance, CEO of Vance Holdings, a real estate development firm responsible for half the luxury condos in downtown Portland. Charity galas. Business awards. A profile in Portland Monthly, the man reshaping the city's skyline. Then I dug deeper. Buried in a 2022 police blotter, assault complaint filed by minor against Eli Vance, 17, dismissed due to lack of evidence. No name. No details. Just a line. But it was enough. That night, I parked in my usual spot behind our duplex, a quiet, tree-lined street in southeast Portland. I was halfway up the walk when I saw it. My car. All 4 tires slashed. Deep, deliberate gashes. The driver's side window shattered. Glass glittered on the wet pavement like broken stars. And tucked beneath the windshield wiper, a folded piece of white paper. I picked it up with trembling hands. Nurses should stick to healing, not digging. No signature. No return address. Just those 8 words, typed in crisp, impersonal font. I stood there in the rain, soaked to the bone, clutching that note like it was a live wire. This wasn't teenage mischief. This was a message. A threat. I called the police. They came an hour later, a tired-looking officer with a clipboard and zero urgency. Vandalism, huh? He said, glancing at the car. Any idea who'd do this? I think it's connected to my daughter's boyfriend, I said. Eli Vance. His father's Richard Vance. The officer's expression shifted, subtle, but I caught it. Recognition. Maybe even caution. Vance, huh? He scribbled something. We'll file a report. But without witnesses or surveillance, there's not much we can do. Someone left a note, I said, handing it over. He read it, then tucked it into an evidence bag. Could be a prank. Kids these days. It's not a prank, I said, voice cracking. They're trying to scare me. He gave me a look that said I've heard that before and handed me a case number. We'll look into it. I knew he wouldn't. Back inside, Lila was waiting. She took one look at my face, at my wet hair, my shaking hands, and burst into tears. Mom, please, she sobbed, gripping my arms. Just stop. Stop asking questions, stop going after him. You're making everything worse. Worse how? I demanded. He vandalized my car, Lila. He's threatening us. He didn't, she shouted, then lowered her voice, glancing at the window. You don't know that. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe it was random. with a note saying nurses should stick to healing? That's not random. She flinched like I'd struck her. You don't understand. He said if you keep pushing, he'll tell everyone the truth about the crash. That I caused it. That you lied to cover for me. They'll take your nursing license, Mom. They'll put me in juvie. Is that what you want? I stared at her, my brilliant, broken daughter, and felt the ground shift beneath me. She wasn't defending him out of love. She was obeying him out of terror. I'm trying to protect you, I whispered. You're not, she cried. You're just making him angrier. He's not like other guys, Mom. He has power. His dad owns half the city. They can do anything they want. And you're just a nurse. The words landed like a slap. Not cruel. Just true. In their world, I was nothing. Expendable. Replaceable. But in hers? I was all she had. That night, I lay awake, listening to her muffled sobs through the wall. My ribs ached. My arm throbbed. But worse than the pain was the realization settling in my chest like lead. This was never just about a crash. It was about control. Eli didn't just want Lila, he wanted to own her. And anyone who got in his way? He'd crush them quietly, cleanly, with the full weight of his father's influence behind him. And I'd walked right into his crosshairs. I thought about calling child services. About going to the school counselor. About showing the police that old assault report. But then I pictured Lila's face, her wide, terrified eyes, and knew she'd deny everything. She'd call me paranoid. She'd run back to him, convinced he was her only safety net. Because that's how it works. The abuser becomes the lifeline. I got up, walked to her door, and pressed my ear against it. Silence now. She'd cried herself to sleep. I whispered into the dark, I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. But seeing it wasn't enough. I had to stop it. And to do that, I needed proof, real, undeniable proof, that would make even the Van Cess flinch. Because if I failed, I wouldn't just lose my daughter. I'd lose her forever. The silence after the vandalism wasn't peaceful, it was suffocating. Every creak of the house, every ping of my phone, felt like a warning. Lila barely spoke to me unless forced. She slept with her door locked now. And every time I passed her room, I heard the low murmur of her voice, always talking to him. I couldn't go to the police again. Not without proof. Not when they'd already dismissed me like I was just another paranoid mom with a grudge. So I went where I knew how to find truth, the records. It wasn't hard. I still had hospital system access, my leave was administrative, not revoked. And through a shared health network, I could request student health files from Portland public schools with a valid clinical justification. I typed it in with steady hands, follow-up for adolescent trauma assessment. Suspected non-accidental injury. Patient, Lila Chen. 20 minutes later, the file loaded. My breath caught. 2 visits to the school nurse in the last 4 weeks. First entry, complains of chest tightness, dizziness, inability to sleep. Patient tearful. Diagnosed, acute anxiety episode. Second entry, 3 days later, multiple bruises on upper arms and left forearm. Patient states fell downstairs. No visible swelling or gait abnormality. Bruising inconsistent with reported mechanism. Documented. Referred to counselor. Inconsistent with reported mechanism. Medical code for this: wasn't an accident. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. My daughter, my bright, stubborn, once fearless girl, had been walking around with hidden wounds, and I hadn't seen it. Not really. Not until it was almost too late. I called Maya. Lila's best friend since middle school. The one who used to spend weekends at our house, braiding Lila's hair and eating burnt pancakes I made on Sunday mornings. Maya answered on the fourth ring, voice hushed. Ms. Chen? Maya, it's me. I need to talk to you about Lila. A pause. Then, I can't. Please. I'm not trying to get her in trouble. I'm trying to keep her safe. Another silence. Longer this time. I heard muffled voices in the background, her parents, maybe. Then a door closing. She's scared, Maya whispered, voice cracking. Like, really scared. She won't talk about it, but she flinches when her phone buzzes. She stopped coming to school early because Eli waits by the bike racks. And last week, she cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes after he texted her. Did she say why she's afraid of him? She just said, if anyone found out what really happened that night, everything would fall apart. And that he'd make sure we both regretted it. My stomach dropped. That night. Maya, was Eli in the car with us? A sharp inhale. I don't know for sure. But she told me once that he showed up at our house that evening. Said he needed to talk. She left through the back door so you wouldn't see him. So he was there. The crash wasn't just Lila grabbing the wheel in a fit of rage. It was something else entirely. That night, while Lila slept, finally, exhausted from days of tension, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and a cup of cold tea. I typed Eli Vance Juvenile Record Portland into a legal database I still had access to through a former colleague. Most juvenile records are sealed. But not all. It took 3 hours, 2 dead ends, and a favor called into a retired court clerk I'd once helped through chemo. Finally, a name surfaced, State vs. Eli Vance, 2023. Charge, misdemeanor assault. Victim, 17-year-old female. Case dismissed due to lack of cooperation from complainant. I dug deeper. Found a local news snippet buried in an archive. Teen girl recants statement in assault case involving developer's son. No photo. No full name. But the details matched. Eli was 17, the girl was a classmate, and the incident occurred after a school party. She'd recanted because he threatened her family. Just like he was threatening mine. I printed everything. The health records. The news clip. The case number. I laid them out on the table like evidence in a trial I hadn't asked for but couldn't avoid. The next morning, I waited until Lila came downstairs for breakfast. She looked exhausted, eyes shadowed, hoodie pulled tight around her face. Sit down, I said gently. She froze. What now? I found your school health records. Her face went pale. You hacked into them? I used my medical credentials. Legally. Because I'm your mother, and I'm terrified. She turned to leave, but I stepped in front of her. Lila. Look at me. Tears welled in her eyes. Why can't you just let it go? Because I saw the bruises. Because Maya told me you're scared of him. Because there's a sealed assault case from 2 years ago, and the girl dropped the charges after he threatened her. Lila's breath hitched. She sank into a chair, trembling. I didn't want you to know, she whispered. Know what? She looked up, tears streaming. He was in the car that night. The words hit like a second crash. What? We were arguing. He followed me home after you grounded me. Said I couldn't just cut him off. I told him to leave, but he got in the passenger seat when you went to grab your purse. You didn't see him. He ducked down. My hands went cold. When you started driving, he kept yelling at me, calling me pathetic, saying I'd never leave you, that I was just a kid playing house. I told him to shut up, that I'd tell you everything. That's when she swallowed hard. He grabbed the wheel. Not me. Him. He yanked it hard, like he was trying to scare me. You swerved to avoid hitting the guardrail, and then we flipped. I remembered it now, the blur of movement in the passenger seat just before impact. I thought it was Lila flailing. But it was him. And after? I asked, voice raw. He helped me out. Told me you'd be fine. Then he said, if I ever told anyone he was there, he'd tell the police I was driving. That I stole your car. And that you'd lose your license, your job, everything. He said he'd make sure everyone believed me caused it on purpose. She looked at me, shattered. I thought if I just kept quiet, he'd leave us alone. But he won't. He checks my phone. He shows up at school. He says if I even look at another guy, he'll leak the video. Video? Her face crumpled. From his phone. That night. In his car. Before he came to ours. I didn't know he was recording. I reached for her, but she flinched. I'm so sorry, Mom, she sobbed. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I pulled her into my arms, ignoring the pain in my ribs, the stiffness in my shoulder. She clung to me like she was drowning. It's not your fault, I whispered into her hair. None of it. But as I held her, one truth burned brighter than all the others. Eli Vance didn't just hurt my daughter. He'd been planning this. And if I didn't act fast, really fast, he'd make sure neither of us ever spoke a word of it again. The call came at 6:17 a.m., just as the sky began to bleed gray over Portland's rooftops. I knew before I even saw the number. Unknown caller. Too early for anything good. Too polished for anything accidental. Ms. Chen, said the voice on the other end, smooth, measured, the kind of voice that belonged in boardrooms and charity galas, not on my cracked kitchen phone. This is Richard Vance. My fingers tightened around the receiver. I know who you are. A pause. Not defensive. Not angry. Amused, almost. Good. Then we can skip the pleasantries. I'd like to meet. Or better yet, let's resolve this over the phone. Resolve what? The unfortunate series of misunderstandings involving my son and your daughter. He said it like he was discussing a misplaced invoice, not the unraveling of my life. You've been asking questions. Digging. Making people uncomfortable. That ends today. I'm not making people uncomfortable, I said, voice low. I'm protecting my child. Your daughter is safe, he replied, calm as ice. Eli cares for her deeply. But your persistence is creating a narrative that could harm everyone involved. Including you. Then came the offer. I'm prepared to provide you with a generous settlement, $150,000, to sign a mutual non-disclosure agreement. You walk away. No more inquiries. No police reports. No media. You keep your job. Your reputation. Your quiet life. And Lila stays with the boy she loves. I almost laughed. You think money fixes this? I think money prevents worse, he corrected gently. Refuse, and I can't guarantee what happens next. Not out of malice, Ms. Chen. Out of necessity. I hung up. Not because I was brave, but because if I'd stayed on the line another second, I might have broken. 2 days later, the first blow landed. A formal letter from the Oregon State Board of Nursing. Anonymous complaint filed. Allegations, diversion of controlled substances, and repeated negligence in post-op patient monitoring. Both claims were lies, vicious, specific, and just plausible enough to trigger an investigation. By noon, my hospital placed me on immediate administrative leave. No hearing. No warning. Just a sterile email and a security escort to collect my things. My colleagues wouldn't meet my eyes in the parking lot. One nurse I'd mentored for years turned her cart sharply when she saw me coming. That night, Lila didn't come home until after midnight. She smelled like his cologne, something expensive and sharp. When I asked where she'd been, she snapped out. Not that you care. I care more than you know, I said. Then stop, she cried, voice cracking. Stop making everything worse. Eli says if you just let it go, none of this would have happened. He says you're obsessed. Obsessed with keeping you safe. Safe? She laughed bitterly. You're the one who got us both in trouble. You think I don't see what's happening? People are talking about you at school. They say you stole pills. That you almost killed a patient. They're lying. Then why won't you sign the paper? She demanded. Why won't you just take the money and shut up? Because it wasn't about money. It was about surrender. And once I signed, I'd never get her back. But I didn't say that. I just watched her storm into her room and slam the door. The next morning, a second letter arrived, this one from Child Protective Services. A welfare check had been requested. Allegations, emotional instability, verbal aggression toward minor, and blaming child for parental trauma. Lila had talked to them. Not just talked, she'd painted me as the villain. The angry, unstable mother who couldn't accept that her daughter had moved on. Who twisted accidents into conspiracies. Who couldn't let go. I sat on the edge of my bed, the letter trembling in my hands. My nursing license, 15 years of double shifts, of holding dying strangers' hands, of showing up when no one else would, was now dangling by a thread. My job was gone. My daughter believed I was the monster. And the man who'd orchestrated it all was sipping single malt scotch in a penthouse overlooking the Willamette River. For the first time since the crash, I considered it. The NDA. The $150,000. The quiet exit. Maybe it was the only way to save what was left. I pulled out the printed copy Richard's lawyer had emailed after I missed his call. Clean, legal, final. All I had to do was sign. Walk away. Let Eli keep his grip on her. Let her believe I chose money over truth. I almost did. But that afternoon, while Lila was at school, mandatory counseling, she'd said, though I knew it was another meeting with him, I went into her room to return a hoodie she'd left in the laundry. Her laptop was open on the desk. Password protected. But her journal, real paper, ink-stained, hidden beneath her mattress, wasn't. I told myself I wouldn't read it. That it was her privacy. But then I saw the date on the first page, October 12th. The night before the crash. My hands shook as I flipped it open. He says if I leave him, he'll tell everyone I begged for it. That I'm desperate. That I'm broken. He showed me the video again. Said he'd send it to my teachers. my mom, the whole school. I can't breathe. I wish I'd never met him. Mom asked about the bruises today. I lied. I hate lying to her. But if she knew the truth, she'd go after him. And he'd destroy her. Like he destroyed Maya's friend last year. No one believed her either. He was in the car that night. He grabbed the wheel on purpose. He wanted to scare me into staying. And it worked. Now Mom's hurt, and it's all my fault. But if I tell, he'll say I was driving. He'll say I stole her car. She'll lose everything. Page after page. Dates. Threats. Details so raw they made my chest ache. On the last page, written just 3 days ago. I can't do this anymore. But I don't know how to stop. Mom thinks I don't see how hard she's trying. But I do. And that's the worst part. Because I'm letting him hurt her too. I sank to the floor, the journal clutched to my chest, sobbing, not from despair, but from clarity. She hadn't turned against me. She was drowning. And every word she'd said to social services, every accusation, was a performance to keep Eli from unleashing hell on us both. Richard Vance hadn't just trapped her. He'd counted on me breaking first. But I wouldn't. Because now I had proof, not just of the crash, not just of the threats, but of the pattern. The grooming. The control. The months of calculated cruelty disguised as love. I wiped my face, stood, and walked to my desk. I opened my laptop and typed a new email to the detective I'd worked with during the opioid crisis task force years ago. The one who owed me. Subject line, need your help. It's about Eli Vance. And it's worse than I thought. Then I picked up the NDA and tore it in half. Let them come. This time, I wouldn't be silent. The journal changed everything. Not because it gave me new facts, though it did, but because it gave me back my daughter. Not the liar, not the accomplice, but the terrified girl who'd been screaming inside for months. That journal was her lifeline, tossed into the dark in case someone might finally see her. I wasn't going to waste it. 2 days after finding it, I called Rosa Delgado. Rosa had been a homicide detective with Portland PD for 23 years before retiring to care for her grandson. I'd met her 5 years ago when her husband came through the ICU with septic shock. I stayed late every night, adjusted his pain meds when the night nurse missed his cues, held Rosa's hand when she broke down in the family lounge. She'd hugged me at his funeral and whispered, "If you ever need anything, anything at all, you call me." I dialed her number with shaking hands. "Mara," she answered on the second ring. "You sound like hell." "I need your help," I said, voice low. "Not as a nurse. As a mother." I told her everything, the crash, the bruises, the threats, the NDA offer, the complaints to the board, the journal. I left nothing out. When I finished, there was silence. Then a sharp exhale. "Bring me the journal," she said. "And every text, every note, every lie they've thrown at you. And Mara? Don't tell anyone you're coming." I met her at a diner off 82nd, neutral ground, no cameras, just greasy coffee and vinyl booths. Rosa looked older, her silver hair pulled back, eyes sharp as ever. She read Lila's journal cover to cover, then flipped through the printouts I'd brought. "This isn't just abuse," she said finally. "It's a pattern. And that father? He's not just enabling, he's funding it." We started digging. Rosa still had contacts in the department, in traffic cams, in records. Within 48 hours, she found it, grainy black and white footage from a gas station near our house, time-stamped the night of the crash. There he was, Eli Vance, slipping into the passenger seat of my car while I was inside paying. Lila never told me he'd followed her home. Then came the texts, dozens more I hadn't seen, recovered from a cloud backup Lila didn't know existed. Say it was a deer or I send the video to your school. Your mom's license is already hanging by a thread. One word from me and it's gone. You belong to me. Don't forget that. But the real bombshell came from Rosa's old financial crimes buddy. Buried in sealed court documents from the 2023 assault case, a $75,000 consulting fee paid by Richard Vance to the victim's family 2 weeks before she recanted. Not a settlement. Not a gift. A payoff. With a non-disclosure clause so tight it could choke. We had it all. The next morning, I walked into the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office and filed a formal report, not just for the crash, but for felony witness intimidation, domestic violence, evidence tampering, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. The officer who took it looked skeptical, until Rosa walked in behind me, badge retired but presence intact. "This isn't gossip," she said coolly. "It's a case. And if you don't escalate it, I'll go straight to the DA myself." They escalated it. 3 days later, I sat in an office across from Assistant District Attorney Lena Cho. She was mid-40s, no nonsense, with eyes that missed nothing. She'd read the file. Watched the footage. Listened to the voice memo. "This could be huge," she said. "But I need Lila. She's scared," I admitted. "Then unscare her." That night, I didn't plead. I didn't beg. I just placed the evidence on the kitchen table, photos, transcripts, the gas station footage on my laptop, and said, "This is your life, Lila. Not his. Yours." She stared at the screen, at the image of Eli climbing into my car, at the texts calling her mine, at the payment record that proved he'd done this before. And then she cried, not the panicked sobs of before, but deep, gut-wrenching tears of release. "I'll do it," she whispered. "I'll tell them everything." The grand jury convened in 6 weeks. Richard Vance tried to bury it before it started. His lawyers called the DA's office. His PR team floated rumors about my mental instability and history of erratic behavior. He even sent another offer, $500,000 this time, to resolve this privately for the sake of the children. I threw the letter in the trash. The courtroom was packed on the first day of testimony. Eli sat beside his father, polished, smug, wearing a tailored suit like he was attending a gala, not a criminal hearing. He glanced at Lila once, cold, warning, and she flinched. But then she stood. She walked to the stand with her head high, voice trembling but clear. She described the control, the isolation, the fear. She played the voice memo. She identified the gas station footage. When the defense attorney tried to paint her as a troubled teen with anger issues, she looked him dead in the eye and said, "I wasn't angry. I was trapped. And your client knew it." Then it was my turn. I laid out the timeline, the crash, the lies, the vandalism, the nursing board complaints, the journal. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just told the truth, one clean fact after another. On cross-examination, Eli's lawyer sneered, "Isn't it true you'd do anything to keep your daughter away from her boyfriend, even fabricate a crime?" "No," I said. "I'd do anything to keep her alive." That's when Eli cracked. During the prosecution's rebuttal, they played a newly recovered audio Eli arguing with a friend 2 days after the crash, "She's lucky I didn't kill her. Next time, I'll make sure the car flips the other way." Eli shot to his feet. "That's a lie. That's edited." But the damage was done. His mask slipped. For the first time, the courtroom saw the venom beneath the polish. Richard Vance leaned over and whispered something urgent, but it was too late. The jury saw it too. The DA added 2 new charges that afternoon: aggravated assault and criminal threat. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Richard Vance shoved through them, face tight, barking, "This is a witch hunt." But no one cared. The evidence was digital. Immutable. Public. Money couldn't erase a gas station camera. It couldn't delete a voice memo. It couldn't unwrite a teenage girl's journal. For the first time in months, I breathed. Lila took my hand as we walked to the car. No flinching. No fear. Just her fingers laced with mine, warm and sure. "He can't hurt us anymore," she said. "No," I agreed. "He can't. Because the truth, once spoken, can't be taken back." And this time, it was loud enough to shatter every lie they'd built. The gavel hadn't even fallen before the world began to shift. Eli Vance was charged with felony witness intimidation, aggravated assault, and unlawful restraint. His father's name, once whispered in Portland boardrooms with reverence, now sparked hushed conversations in coffee shops and headlines in the Oregonian. Developer's son accused in coercive abuse case, read 1. Vance Holdings under investigation for past settlements, read another. Richard tried damage control, donations, press releases, a staged interview where he called the allegations a tragic misunderstanding, but the truth had momentum now. Investors pulled out. Partners distanced themselves. Within months, his empire began to crack at the seams. And in the quiet aftermath, my life stitched itself back together, stitch by careful stitch. The Oregon State Board of Nursing dropped all complaints against me the same week Eli's arraignment made national news. My hospital didn't just reinstate me, they apologized. Not with a memo, but in person. The chief of staff stood in my old ICU bay, eyes downcast, and said, "We failed you, Mara. We let rumor override loyalty." Then he offered me something unexpected, a new role. Patient Advocacy Liaison. A position created to bridge the gap between clinical care and emotional safety, especially for teens in crisis. I took it. Not because I needed the job, but because I finally understood what my real work was. Lila and I started therapy the week after the grand jury indictment. Dr. Evans' office became our weekly sanctuary, a place where silence wasn't suspicion, and tears weren't weakness. The first few sessions were brutal. Lila barely spoke. When she did, it was in fragments. I thought if I just obeyed him, he'd stop. I was so ashamed. I didn't want you to see me like that. I learned to listen without fixing. To hold space instead of solutions. And slowly, so slowly it felt like watching grass grow, she began to breathe again. 6 months after the trial began, we packed up our Portland house. Not because we had to, but because every street corner held a ghost. The gas station where Eli slipped into my car. The coffee shop where he smiled like he owned the world. Even our own driveway, where my tires had been slashed, felt haunted. We moved to Astoria, a town perched on the edge of the Pacific, where fog rolled in like a slow exhale and the Columbia River met the sea in a constant, churning dance. Our new house was small, white clapboard, blue shutters, a porch that creaked when you stepped on the third plank. No one knew our names. No one asked about our past. We were just Mara and Lila, the quiet nurse and her daughter who loved sketching seashells. I kept my nursing license active but traded scrubs for community work. With the hospital's blessing, and a small grant from a domestic violence nonprofit, I started a support group, Anchor Point. For teenage girls who'd been told love looks like control. Who'd been made to believe their worth depended on obedience. Who'd whispered lies to protect the people hurting them. We met every Thursday in the back room of the public library. Sometimes only 2 girls showed up. Sometimes 10. They didn't need my medical expertise, they needed my silence, my presence, my refusal to flinch when they said, he said no one would believe me. One evening, as I walked home from a session, I passed the beach. And there she was. Lila, barefoot in the sand, hair loose, laughing with 2 girls from her new school. One of them mimed falling off a skateboard, and Lila doubled over, clutching her stomach, sunlight catching the gold flecks in her eyes, the same eyes that had once started in fear every time her phone buzzed. She didn't see me. And I didn't call out. I just stood there, heart full to bursting, watching her be free. Not fixed. Not perfect. But free. Later that night, as we washed dishes side by side, she said quietly, "I had fun today." "I saw," I replied, handing her a plate. She paused, sponge hovering. "Do you ever think about going back? To Portland?" I shook my head. "No. Our life is here now." She nodded, then added, "I'm glad we told the truth." "Me too," I wanted to say. But instead, I turned off the faucet and dried my hands. "I thought I was protecting you by staying silent," I said, echoing words I'd written in my journal weeks earlier. But real protection isn't shielding someone from the truth, it's giving them the strength to face it. She looked at me then, not as a child looks at a parent, but as one survivor to another. And she smiled. That's when I knew we'd made it through. Not unscathed. Not untouched. But together. If this story touched you, share it. Because somewhere, maybe in a quiet bedroom, maybe in a car parked outside a coffee shop, a girl is whispering the same lie. Don't tell them it was my fault. And she needs to know she's not alone.